Hi guys, I hope you're doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies, old and new. Also, welcome to a new episode of Truly Horror, the series where we talk about the true stories, the true events and true crimes surrounding certain horror films, the behind the scenes stuff that is often stranger and scarier than the movies themselves. Okay, so today's Truly Horror is about a film that perhaps not many of you have seen, but after I started to look into the true story behind it, I just knew that this was a story that I had to cover on Truly Horror, and one that I think you guys will also find fascinating. Hopefully. And that is the true story behind Elevator Game. To be more accurate, it is actually the true urban legend behind the film and a true crime story that is believed by some to be tied to said legend. So in this episode we will talk first about the film and its story, such as the inclusion of the urban legend and the backstory that the film gives to it. Then we'll talk about the real urban legend, its rules and its origins. Then finally we'll talk a little bit about the true crime story that has odd ties to the urban legend. In terms of the film, I couldn't decide how far into spoilers I was going to go because, like I said earlier, I'm not sure if this is a film you have seen, but after this episode you may be intrigued to go give it a watch. It will be hard though for me to compare the film story with the real life story without talking some spoilers, so I'm going to talk about the opening scene of the film, the rules of the game according to the film, and the film's backstory of the urban legend. But there is a lot of the film that I won't talk about / spoil, so if you do want to watch it, there will still be plenty of surprises for you. However, if you don't want any spoilers, then you can jump forward to this timestamp. Elevator Game opens with a young girl named Becky entering an elevator in an office block. She begins to follow the rules of the elevator game and films herself doing it. She travels to floor 4, 2, 6, back to 2, 10, and then pushes 5. On a post-it, she has the instructions to keep her eyes closed written down, and at first Becky follows the rules. She keeps her eyes closed and doesn't turn around. But she feels breath from behind her, and when the doors take too long to close, Becky panics and opens her eyes. The elevator doors close and she presses 1, but instead of going down, the elevator is heading back up to 10. Becky drops her phone in the panic, and when she feels behind her to pick it up, she touches a pair of bare feet. When she stands up and spins around, there is no one there. But eventually, as the elevator gets higher and higher, Becky feels a presence and she uses the camera on her phone to see what is there and sees a creepy looking woman standing behind her. When the elevator hits 10, the doors open and Becky hears the woman whisper, "Where are you going?" She spins around and sees the 5th floor woman, who then rips Becky apart off screen. Within the film, the elevator game, when played correctly and with the rules followed to the absolute letter, will act as a doorway and allow you to pass into another realm. The realm where the 5th floor woman actually lives, her own little land of the dead called the Red World. The rules of the game, according to the film, are: you enter the elevator and travel to specific floors in a set order. First you travel to floor 4, then down to 2, up to 6, back down to 2, then up to floor 10. Then you press for floor 5. When you get to the 5th floor, the doors will open and a woman will get on the elevator and stand behind you. But here's the key part. You mustn't look at her and you cannot speak to her. If you do look at her or speak to her, she will rip you apart. And if you look back before finishing the game, she will, quote, curse you with her presence and haunt you like a waking nightmare, end quote, or unquote. Before, eventually, just ripping you apart anyway. I assume that this means if you look behind you before you get to floor 5, but it's hard to know for sure because the film isn't really clear about it. As far as the origin of the urban legend within the film's lore, one of the characters does some research. You know how these films go. To the library! They traced the elevator game to a news story from a few decades ago. On a sorority pledge weekend, one sorority group took a pledge named Ally McCormick to an office building where they then locked her in the elevator shaft. Ally was told they would come back for her in an hour, but they went back to the sorority house, got drunk, and just completely forgot about her. Like you do. According to the character telling the story, Ally stayed there all weekend, alone and slowly losing her mind. Come Monday morning, she was crushed by the elevator, and if that wasn't bad enough, she was caught up in the elevator gears and slowly ripped apart. I love a horror film that has its roots in an urban legend, and even more so if that urban legend is real. You know what I mean. But what is the elevator game? Well, the elevator game, also known as the elevator to another world, is an urban legend that invites people to play the game in order to travel to another dimension. It's another urban legend in the same vein as Bloody Mary and Candyman that forces, encourages, or tempts the listener to take an active role. In the game, usually one person, although there can be multiple of you, will enter an elevator, and if they follow the instructions exactly, the 5th floor woman will appear, and then that person will either exit the building safely or they will be transported to another dimension. Over the years and through various accounts in different languages, the rules have actually always remained the same. In the earlier accounts from Japan, there was little to no information on the 5th floor woman herself, or what would happen if you successfully entered the other dimension, or how you got safely back from there. But as the years went on and there were accounts from Korea and the West, more and more information was then added to the urban legend, fattening it out. The rules are as follows. You enter the elevator and travel to certain floors in a particular order. This sequence of floors is where the film stayed accurate to the real-life urban legend. You travel to 4, down to 2, up to 6, then back down to 2, then up to 10 and down to 5. You must remain on the elevator at all times and no outsider can enter while you are playing. If either of these things happen, then you must start all over again. Once you get to floor 5 and the doors open, you must close your eyes and keep them closed. It is said a woman will get into the elevator with you, but you mustn't look at her or speak to her. The woman is known as the 5th floor woman, the antagonist of the urban legend, if you will, like Bloody Mary and Candyman before her. All that is known, or should I say all that is said about the 5th floor woman is that she is not human. In some accounts, she is described as not what she seems, in others mysterious. I also found an article that said some have claimed the 5th floor woman is a stranger, while others claim she appears as someone you know from your past. One way the film differs from the real urban legend is in the consequences of either looking at her or speaking to her. In the film, you would be ripped apart. In real life, accounts claim that the 5th floor woman will merely take you as her own, or take you to another world with no chance of returning to your own. With your eyes still closed, you are to miraculously find the button for floor 1, press it and wait for the door to close. Now, if the elevator travels down to 1, then the game has failed and you must leave immediately. Do not speak, do not look back. Just exit the elevator and exit the building. If the elevator travels up to floor 10, then you have completed the game. Now, as I said earlier, as the years went by, more information was added to the urban legend. It's not for me to say if any of this is true or not, so it's up to you individually to decide for yourself. But the story goes, if the elevator reaches floor 10, you are faced with 2 choices. Stay in the elevator or get out. If you get out and wander around the other dimension, you will notice a handful of things. You will be alone, as in the only person there. No other soul, zip, nada. Number 2, technology such as phones or cameras won't work there, hence no documented footage of this place. And number 3, the other dimension will look just like our world, except it will be in total darkness, save for one red cross either reflected in the windows, in the sky, or off in the distance. To return to your own world, you must use the same elevator that you used to get there, and then travel to the exact same sequence of floors. 4, 2, 6, 2, 10 and 5. Once you're on the 5th floor, press for the 1st floor. The elevator will again begin travelling up to the 10th, but to stop this, you simply press 1 again before you reach floor 10. Once you reach the first floor, check before you exit the elevator to make sure it is your own world and then safely exit. Although the exact country of origin for the urban legend has never been confirmed, it is widely believed that the legend began in an East Asian country, either Japan or South Korea, dating back from as recently as 2011. But in my research, I stumbled across an article written by Lucia Peters on a website called The Ghost in the Machine that questioned that date of 2011. They had written an article in 2014 about the urban legend, which turned out to be immensely popular. This popularity then led them to dig even deeper into the game and its origins. If you fancy doing further reading on the game, then I will leave a link to the article in the description box, as it's actually really interesting. And they've also written a book called Dangerous Games to Play in the Dark, which I'm interested in. It's a compendium of games you play based off of urban legends, like Bloody Mary and Elevator Game. Anyway, through their research, Lucia Peters found accounts referencing the urban legend further back than was originally thought, back in 2008. So, while it is still a very recent urban legend, it is older than people originally thought. Lucia Peters also theorizes that the urban legend could have been inspired by a tragedy that happened in Tokyo, Japan in June of 2006. An elevator in the Minato ward malfunctioned, travelling upwards while the doors were still open, which led to the tragic death of a 16-year-old high school student who was getting off the elevator with his bicycle. An investigation after the accident found that this was one of several cases where a particular model of elevator malfunctioned in the exact same way. Now, apparently the elevators were all replaced after the accident, but after the story hit the news, there remained in people a fear of riding elevators. I get it. I hate the things. I've been trapped in an elevator twice in my life. In 2013, the elevator game suddenly gained much more attention and saw a rise in popularity and interest in the West after a true crime story came to light about a woman who had gone missing in February 2013 from the Cecil Hotel in downtown LA. I'm talking about the strange case of Elisa Lam. The mysterious aspect to Elisa Lam's disappearance and the haunting last footage of the 21-year-old was ripe for theories behind what had happened to her, including some claiming Elisa was playing the elevator game and that it was the urban legend that was responsible for her death. Now, before we go any further, I just want to make it clear that I do not believe that if Elisa was playing the game, it had anything to do with her disappearance or death. However, we are going to talk a little bit about it, but I feel as though this is a sad and tragic case that must have been incredibly distressing to her family and friends, especially seeing as how we still don't know exactly what happened to her. And while people will always search for answers in the unknown and try to find comfort in explaining things away, the sensationalism of using the urban legend to explain it seems to detract slightly from the fact that this woman lost her life. Again, in these Truly Horror episodes, I think it is always up to you and your own opinions as to what you think of it. Here at Truly Horror, we simply look at the stories and the accounts from people. The Elisa Lam case is far too big to fully cover here, but it is a really interesting one, so I would highly recommend reading further into it, and there is also a documentary on it on Netflix. The Cecil Hotel has quite the reputation, and for the most part, it's not a good one. It's one linked to death, supposed hauntings, and famous true crime names. In the 1930s, it was home to multiple murders and apparent suicides. Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, lived there in the mid-80s. And Australian serial killer Jack Unterweger also lived there in 1991. I apologise if I said that surname wrong. I did try to find out how to pronounce it on Google, but it had no information, so I do apologise. But then, he's a serial killer, so I don't feel that bad. And Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia, was a guest of the hotel before her murder in 1947. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that the hotel is actually a hotspot for evil, but merely a business that has been affected by its location and socioeconomics. But the death of Elisa Lam only fanned the flames of rumours about the hotel. In 2011, the Cecil Hotel tried to rebrand itself and shake off the bad image of the past, and reopened a section of the hotel as a hostel under the name Stay on Main, advertising itself as a budget hotel for travellers, and it is in Stay on Main that Elisa Lam booked into. Lam was a student from Vancouver, Canada. She was 21 years old and she suffered with depression and had bipolar disorder and was taking multiple medications to manage both of them. She was a regular blogger posting about living with her conditions, quotes and photos of fashion. She had been travelling solo up the coast of California, and in January 2013 she booked into Stay on Main. She checked in on the 26th and intended to check out on the 31st. When she failed to check out, staff checked her room and found her belongings still there, but no sign of Elisa. She was reported missing on the 1st of February and police arrived at the hotel to investigate. A week later, security footage that had been provided to the police by the hotel was released to the general public in hopes that it may provide some information. The footage was of Elisa in the hotel's elevator and had apparently been recorded on the last day she'd been seen alive. The footage itself is, in my opinion, quite unnerving and almost distressing to watch. It shows Elisa entering the elevator and behaving in a strange and erratic manner. She presses multiple buttons and appears to shout to someone out of shot, but also then seems to be hiding from someone unseen by the camera. Elisa then jumps out of the elevator only to get back in and does this multiple times. It's unclear from the footage if the elevator travels to different floors within the times she exits and re-enters. While the search for Elisa continued, other guests of the hotel had been reporting their room had bad water pressure and that the water also had a funny taste. On the 19th of February, responding to these complaints, a maintenance worker checked the water tanks on the hotel's roof, and in one of the tanks he sadly found the remains of Elisa Lam. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning, but there were so many questions left that still don't seem to have been answered. Questions like how and why she ended up in the tank, and how did she get to it? For the maintenance guy to get to the tanks, he apparently had to go up in the elevator, then up a flight of stairs, and the stairs and doors that you need to use to get to them were all locked. Staff use passcodes and keys to get past them, and any attempt to break through would trigger an alarm. There also seemed to be some confusion over whether or not the lid to the water tank was open or closed when she was found. If it had been closed, there were questions over just how she had closed it herself, seeing as how the water level wouldn't have made it physically possible for her to reach up and close it. It was initially reported that the lid was closed, but this was then labelled a communication error, and the maintenance guy had apparently reported the lid having been open when he found her. Looking into the case, there are differing versions and pieces of information, and after the elevator footage was released to the general public, it set people into a frenzy of trying to understand what had happened. It's not difficult looking at the footage to see why people made a connection to the urban legend elevator game. As well as the elevator game, there were also links drawn between the case and the Japanese film Dark Water. The case and the Cecil Hotel would also go on to inspire a series of American Horror Story. And that is the true story, or at least the true urban legend, behind the film Elevator Game. This was one of those episodes that could have been hours long, but I've tried to whittle it down to the basics and most interesting parts. But if you do want to look into it further, I will leave a link to the article, and I would say check out the documentary on the Elisa Lam case. If you're new here, then don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and join the What the Horror family. Let me know your thoughts on the film, the urban legend, and the true crime case down below in the comments. Did you find any of this interesting? Will you check out the film if you haven't already? But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.